When you watch this video to the end, I'm going to show you how these old model selling techniques are literally sabotaging your results and unconsciously causing many of your prospects to be turned off and costing you lost sales every single week. But here's the deal. I'm going to show you how to fix all of that, where you're closing a greater percentage of your sales, getting your prospects to sell and persuade themselves so that you're making a ton more money, but doing it in a lot less time with a lot less effort. So check this out. Did you know that according to behavioral science, which is the study of human psychology, how we interact, behave, how we communicate with each other as human beings, that there are three main modes of communications. Number one, we're actually the least persuasive when we tell people things. So imagine being at home with your spouse and you tell them you want them to do something. What do they typically do? They push back, right? So when we tell people things, when we try to posture them, when we try to push them into doing something that we want them to do, according to science, we're the least persuasive. Now that also includes presenting, telling your story, giving a sales pitch. We've all been taught how to do that, right? Also putting sales pressure on somebody. And the biggest one, assuming the sale. According to science, least persuasive way to sell. Now, the second form of persuasion, which is slightly more persuasive, is when we have a discussion or a debate. So going back to the spouse example, instead of telling them what to do, we have a discussion with them, a little bit more persuasive, right? But the third form of persuasion, the most persuasive way to communicate, is when we allow others to persuade themselves. So that's dialogue. That's called NEPQ, which stands for Neuro Emotional Persuasion Questioning. So the real question is, how do you get your prospects to just persuade themselves? You can't just, do you just show up to their office or call them on the phone or knock on their door and just say, hey dude, persuade yourself, write me a check? Of course not. We have to learn very specific, skilled questions and when and how to ask those questions at the right time to quite literally get our prospects to persuade themselves. That's neuro-emotional persuasion questions. Now, before we get into what neuro-emotion persuasion questions will actually do for you to close more sales, let's first take a look at the history of how the heck we even got here. What is the old model of selling? How did we get to that point? So before we go over what neuro-emotional persuasion questioning is and how it will work for you to close more deals, let's first take a look at how the heck we got here. Let's take a look at the old model of selling that most salespeople are still using. First of all, I've got to preface this. Did you know that the first sales model was created in 1898 by a dude named Elias St. Elmo Lewis? He actually sold circuses, believe it or not. And it was called the AIDA model of selling. Now, you might have heard of that. It stands for attention, interest, desire, action. Believe it or not, this is the same sales model that 99% of all salespeople are still using to this day. I think that's like 117 or 118 years ago. It's crazy. So in the old model of selling, you're going to notice that really only about 10% is about building trust or building rapport. You know the drill. The salesperson would come into the office or the home of the potential customer and they'd try to find something that they had in common. Maybe they would talk about the weather or who won the football game last night, or maybe they'd see a picture of their daughter on the desk and say, hey, my daughter got married too. Basically a bunch of BS that really has nothing to do with why you're there. And I want to ask you this. Do you think that prospects know this? Of course they do. They've heard it 1,000 times before by every single salesperson they've ever talked to. Now, after that, the next 10% would be about identifying needs. Salesperson would ask a few generic questions such as this one. I'll give you an example. Mr. Prospect, can you tell me 2 to 3 problems that you're experiencing now and maybe what you'd like to see happen to fix those problems? Just a logical question. We're all taught those. The prospect would then do what? They'd rattle off a few generic problems to the salesperson with simple, logical answers that are really just the surface of what's really going on. There's no emotion there. And then at that point, the salesperson does what? Well, they go into their sales pitch, their presentation. As you can see here, that's 50%, so half of the old model. Talk about all about their features and benefits of what their product and service can do, and how great the product is, and how great and awesome the company is, and how they have the best this and the best that, which, by the way, every single salesperson says. And then, like you see here, 30% of the sale, the last 30%, they go in for the hammer, they go in for the close, and usually the prospect does what? They throw out objections. Then the salesperson has to try and overcome those objections with objection handling techniques, and they try to close again and again and again. At that point, the salesperson starts chasing them to try and convince them to purchase. Now, does that sound familiar to you? So in the traditional sales model, it's all about getting the sale at the expense of the human relationship with your potential customer. It's a salesperson against the customer mentality, and we're taught like to go to war every day against your prospects, trying to manipulate them and win them over to making the sale. And the traditional model primarily focuses on what? Presenting, closing, objection handling, like you can see, and it puts the emphasis on who? Well, it puts it on you and your agenda of making the sale. Now, I want to ask you this, and just be real with yourself. Who do you think your customer really cares the most about? You and your own agenda of making the sale, or do you think they care more about themselves and what they're looking for? I think you know the answer by now. Think about this though. Do you like being pushed into buying something, or talk to someone whose only agenda is to get you to do what they want you to do? Of course not. You automatically do what? You put up your defensive wall, right? Here's my suggestion. Have you ever considered that your prospects, your potential clients, are doing the same thing to you because of the way you were taught how to communicate with them? So here's the deal. And like I said, I always like to, let's just be real with each other here. What are the results of all of that training? I mean, there's so much sales training from what I call the old sales gurus out there, old model selling techniques. What are the results? What are the facts that you and other salespeople are getting when they teach you how to sell with the outdated selling methods, old model of selling? Well, according to recent stats from payscale.com as of January 2016, the average salesperson in North America, get this, earns $42,670 a year. Now, let me ask you, did you get into sales so you could only average $42,000 a year? Okay, so let's take a look at the new model of selling, or Neuro Emotional Persuasion Questioning. And at the end of this video, I'm going to give you about 5 questions, Neuro Emotional Persuasion questions, that you can use starting today to start closing more sales and start getting your prospects to open up to you at a higher level of success. Now let's go over the new model of selling here. Now, the very top 1% of the top 1% of all salespeople in the world, we know that the sale is not made at the end with old closing techniques and traditional objection handling skills. It's made during what I call the engagement process. Now, the engagement process, as you can see here, is 85% of the sale now. And it's where both you and your potential customer are actually discovering what your prospect is looking for and why they're looking for it. They're only doing that through your skilled questions. And it's just like in romance. The term engagement refers to a period of getting to know the other person before you get married. The same is true in selling and communicating 100%. So the engagement process is where your prospect is persuading themselves from your NEPQ questions. I've got a list of them right here for you. They're telling you what their problems are, why they have those, and how it's affecting them. That's really the key. But more importantly, who are they telling? Well, they're telling themselves. And is it more persuasive when they tell themselves why they need to change their situation and solve their problem? Or is it more persuasive when you tell them why they should change their situation and solve the problem? Of course, you know by now the answer. So this gives you the correct benefits of your solution to bring up to them when you're actually presenting your solution. Now notice, this is only 10% of the new model, your presentation. Takes it way down from 50% to 10%. You're just taking their answers they told you from your skilled questions and matching the correct features and benefits to those. Here's what most salespeople do that use the old model. It's like them taking a bucket of mud. They take the bucket of mud, throw it up against the wall, and they hope and pray that something they say is just going to somehow stick in the prospect's mind, and the prospect is just going to magically buy. In the new model, because of your skilled questions that I'm going to give you access to, you'll know exactly what mud to throw up against the wall because you know what mud will stick because they've already told you from your questions. And then you're going to notice here at the end here that just 5% is asking a few what I call commitment or closing questions that they take the logical next step and they purchase from you. So all this stress, anxiety, frustration that you might be experiencing right now is completely eliminated from your sales process. And it's a very, let's say, natural process because your prospect doesn't feel any sales pressure from you. Now, the new model, it's a way of communicating that I'm going to tell you will completely change the way your potential customers actually view you, how they see you as a salesperson. You're going to go from, the dreaded salesperson in their mind that's just there trying to sell them something, stuff your solution down their throat, to becoming the trusted authority in your entire market. So I want to give you a few questions that you can start using literally today that's going to help you close more sales. Now, here are some NEPQ questions that you can use right now to get your prospect to overcome their own concerns and do that really as two people working together overcoming that concern, rather than you trying to use some objection handling technique that typically triggers sales resistance with most people, and then they turn you down and throw out more objections. So if the prospect says this, James, we just don't have the money for this. We just can't afford this. Now, do you get this objection ever? Probably, right? Everybody does. Here's how you're going to respond to that. Yeah, that's not a problem. So the first words out of your mouth, yeah, that's not a problem. Very easy way. It's a simple way to diffuse the objection. It takes out the sales pressure from the room. You just agree. Yeah, that's not a problem. Just calm, collective tone, exactly like I just did that. Tell me, Mr. Jones, if you did have the budget for this, is this something that would work for you? So take a look. Now, it depends on what you sell. You could use funds, you could use money, budget. Depends on what your product or service is. Let's go over this again. Yeah, that's not a problem. Tell me, if you did have the funding for this, is this something that would work for you? Notice my tonality is calm, collective, and relaxed. This is called an NEPQ, commitment question. Write that down, commitment question. The prospect might say something like this. I think it would. Now, I will tell you, most people will say yes, it would if you've used any PQ questions during your entire sales conversation because they already have that trust factor for you. They view you much differently than most salespeople. They tell you that it would here, but they're also telling who? They're telling themselves. First part of persuasion. You would say this. Well, hold on, though. Why do you feel like it would, though? Let me repeat that. Well, hold on, though. Why do you feel like it would, though? Now, notice I say that in a skeptical tone. The top salespeople in the entire world, the experts, are always skeptical. Okay, it's kind of like a reverse way to persuade. You're always skeptical of what they're saying. Average salespeople are excited. Oh my gosh, yeah, it is great, isn't it? You're going to be skeptical. Well, hold on, though. Why do you feel like it is, though? Notice that tonality. This is an NEPQ probing question. Prospect might say something like this, and there might be variations. Well, we think it would because of X, Y, Z, and B, A, B, D, and it does that, and we really like that. Now, here, they're telling themselves why they feel like it's what they're looking for. They're telling you as well, but they're telling themselves more importantly. And when people tell themselves why they feel something is good for them, they're starting to persuade themselves. Here's what you might say to this. Well, John, I can appreciate that money might be an issue from what you told me. Tell me this, how do you think you can resolve that where you can find the budget to, or depending on what you sell, you can use funds, money, depends on the product or service. Well, John, I can appreciate that money might be an issue from what you've told me. Tell me, how do you think you can resolve that where you can find the funding to, and then you're going to plug in what you sell, then you're going to say, so you can, and you're going to plug in what they told you they wanted, the benefit, what it's going to do for them. So let me give you an example. Let's just say you sell homes, you sell real estate. You could say something like this if they had a concern about the money for the house, it was over their budget. Well, I can appreciate that money might be an issue from what you told me, John. And tell me this, how do you think you can resolve that where you can come up with the extra funds to be able to purchase the house so you can move your family into more of a safer neighborhood that you had talked about earlier? See how you're plugging in what the benefit is once they have those funds to purchase. Or let's say that you sell franchises. I just trained a salesperson one-on-one the other day who sells franchises. You could say something like this. Well, John, I can appreciate that money might be an issue from what you've told me. Tell me, how do you think you can resolve that where you can find the funding to be able to start your own business so you can start having more time with your family that you had talked about? This is called an NEPQ solution awareness questions. Now, a lot of times when you ask these questions, I want you to watch to see how they come up with own ways in their mind to get the funding. They might say, well, I could get some funds out of my 401k, or I could use a credit card, or I could probably move some things around to get the budget for this, I think, or they're going to come up with ways on their own to pay for it. Now, let's say that the prospect doesn't. You ask that question and they come back and say this. Well, I really like this, but I'm just not sure we can budget this in this month. You're going to say something like this. I can understand that. Can I ask, what other avenues do you have to find the budget to be able to? And then you're going to plug in what they told you they wanted. Are you with me here? We can go back to example. Let's say if you sold franchises. I understand. I can appreciate that. Tell me, I guess, what other avenues do you have to find the funding to be able to purchase the business so you can start making more of an income that you had talked about earlier? See how you're plugging in the benefit of what they told you they wanted it for. Now, this is another NEPQ solution awareness question. Now, a lot of prospects at this point will come up with ways they feel they can get the money. They might say, well, I can borrow it from my uncle, or I can get a home equity line of credit, or I could get the board to move around the budget this year to put this in. They're going to come up with ways. They're persuading themselves. Now, if they still can't come up with ways to find the money, to find the funds, then at that point, you're free to make suggestions such as this. You can say something like this. John, can I make a suggestion to you? Yeah, sure, go ahead. Have you considered doing it this way? And then you plug in a suggestion, maybe a finance option, whatever you sell. And then at the end of that, you would say, would that help you? So let's go through that. Can I make a suggestion to you, John? Sure, go ahead. Have you considered doing it on some type of credit card and then just paying it off maybe a few months later when you're starting to make some money? Would that help you? Something like that. Let's say if you sold franchises again, that would work for that example. This is an NEPQ diffusing question. So what I just did is I gave you 5 NEPQ questions that you can go out and use today to get your prospects to open up more to you and start closing more sales. So here's the deal. You know that closing more sales in less time is great. You also know that when you close more sales, you make a ton more money. And you know that mastering the process of NEPQ will help you create more success. That is why we created the Sales Accelerator System. And it bothers me that salespeople plateau in their profession and they don't break through to the point where they can put away enough money to really have the freedom to never work again if they don't want to. So what you're going to get from the Sales Accelerator System is the ability to make a lot more sales in a lot less time, because you're going to have the skills you need to have a much higher closing percentage and sell in a way that doesn't require any of the typical salesy sales pressure tactics that so many people are being taught. I built this just for you so that you can achieve the next level of success in your career. So here's what you're going to get with the Sales Accelerator System. Number one, a 5-part system that you can follow step by step to learn how to use any PQ to explode your sales. Number two, you're also going to get a certified trainer to lead you through each part of the system, and really for 2 reasons. Number one, every high performer has a coach. Your trainer will answer any questions you have about implementing this process into your daily routine. And let's be real, we can all use accountability. All successful people set up accountability, and your coach will hold you accountable to complete the program. If I ask you to guess the price of this product right now, to have one-on-one training with someone who's certified in this material to help you learn skills that will help you blow up your income, what would you guess? You probably didn't guess $7. It's only $7. And it's important to hear why, because if you, like me, think it sounds too good to be true, you'd be correct in that thinking. The reason it's only $7 is because, quite frankly, the program is so good that a high percentage of clients who get this end up making significant investments with us to continue their sales careers. The other reason that it's only $7 is that we certify sales professionals and have several high-paying, high-powered companies that are continually coming to us looking for top-notch trained talent. And when we place someone with them, those companies give us an override, a large override, on that revenue that those people create. And as a bonus, I'm going to give you private access to a closed-door training where people paid over $10,000 to be there. You're going to be watching me on stage using any PQ to close an actual sale unrehearsed on the stage. And I'm so sure that this is going to work for you that if you don't think it's the best training for the money you've ever had, $7, just let us know and we'll give you double your money back. Yeah, that's right. I said double your money back. And really the reason why I can do this is, quite frankly, not a single person has asked for a refund at the time I'm recording this video. And I'm also going to include my 2 best closing questions that I used in my sales career when I had my job to earn over $2.4 million a year in straight commissions. So you're going to get the 5-part system that you can follow step by step to learn how to use any PQ, one-on-one training with a certified trainer, private access to a closed-door training where people paid over 10 grand to attend, and my top 2 closing questions. Again, if for any reason you are dissatisfied in any way with the program, just let us know and we'll double your money back. Plus, I'll even let you keep the program and all of the bonuses. So just hit the button right now. If you're seeing this page, we're currently taking on new clients. When we're at full capacity, we don't have any more room, we simply just turn the page off.